This is Art Television.
Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the connection between COVID and meditation practice. Connection between COVID and meditation. And I don't know if you knew that there is a connection between the two. Were you aware of that? There is, right? There's a really close connection between COVID and meditation. And this is what I'm going to kind of bring out tonight. And to show you how this works, I'm going to just mention very briefly about one of the things that came up during the Rains retreat at Bodhinyana Monastery. Bodhinyana Monastery, for those of you who don't know, that's the monastery where we hang out. Venerable Sumito and myself and Ajahn Brahm and all the other monks. And the nuns, they have a separate monastery. And every year we have a 3-month retreat called the Rains retreat. It's an ancient tradition going back all the way to the time of the Buddha, 2,500 years. One of the really cool things about Buddhism is that we have all these ancient traditions that go back at least 2,500 years, maybe more. It's kind of nice, isn't it, to be part of the ancient tradition like that? I find it really nice. It's a kind of a way, a path that has been well trodden over 2,500 years. Lots of people reaching deep states of peace and powerful insights through this path. It's kind of really exhilarating, this kind of whole Buddhist experience of traveling this incredibly sacred and powerful path. Anyway, so we have this Rains retreat every year. And during this Rains retreat, I usually give some talks to the lay people especially, and also the kind of younger monastics. I think, mostly the lay people. And one of the questions that came up during these teachings, they asked me, and this, I've heard this question many times before, when you're a monk, you've heard every question many times. So when you ask me a question and I answer straight away, it is not because I think very fast, it's because I've heard every question before. That's why this book comes out straight away. I know. So this is the reason. So this question was, when we hear Ajahn Brahm teach about meditation, he teaches like this. He says, you just sit down. Sit down, cross your legs, you're comfortable, you relax. That's it. And you relax, you sit back, and you don't do anything. And when that happens, when you just sit down comfortably and you relax, you just become more and more peaceful, and you become really, really quiet. Then the bliss starts to arise. And then when the bliss arises, you get these kind of powerful lights in the mind. And then when the powerful lights come up, you go into these altered states of consciousness called samadhi in the Pali language. This is how the Ajahn Brahm has almost always taught meditation like that. And if you ask him a question, it doesn't work for me, he will say, just sit longer and you'll be fine. Do you remember that, Dennis? Did I ever tell that to you? Just sit longer. You only sat for 1 hour. 1 hour is not enough. Take another hour, then it will all arise and happen. And this is how Ajahn Brahm teaches meditation, or how he used to teach meditation. And these days he's a bit more, for those of you who come here, he's a bit more detailed. He will often do the body sweeping and these kind of things, to kind of give people a bit more to hold on to. But that is how he used to teach meditation, because that is how he meditates. He just sits back. He allows things to be. He doesn't do anything at all, and all of these things just arise, and you go into these amazing states of consciousness as a consequence. So these people, they would come up to me and they ask me, well, this is how Ajahn Brahm teaches, and when I do it, it doesn't happen. Why not? When I do it, I fall asleep. When I do it, I just think all the time. When I do it, I just fantasize about what I'm going to eat when I get finished with this blooming retreat. When we have these retreats at the monastery, everyone is on 8 precepts. There's no eating in the afternoon. Pretty hard. I don't know if you've tried that, not to eat in the afternoon at all. It's pretty tough, especially as a layperson. As a monk, it's actually quite easy, because you've done this for so long. Even the thought of food after midday is kind of almost repulsive after a while, because you're not used to it. But for lay people, if you're used to it, it's actually quite hard. No entertainment at the monastery. No mobile phone. That's a really hard one for most people these days. People are addicted to the mobile phones, as I'm sure you are aware of. Probably some people here addicted to the mobile phones. Is there anyone here who's not addicted to the mobile phone? Yeah, 1, 2, okay, there's a few. Wow, that's pretty impressive. Yeah, it's rare to find people who are not addicted to the mobile phones these days, at least a little bit addicted. And so this is the problem. Yeah, you are kind of there, and then you fantasize about what you're going to do outside. You fall asleep, you are restless, you think about things. This is what happens to people when they follow Ajahn Brahm's method. So they say, help! What is going on? What is the difference between me and Ajahn Brahm? How come he can do it? I follow the same instruction, nothing happens. And it's a very interesting question, right? It's actually a really, really profound question. And I've heard this question so many times, and I'm not really sure what to say here. What do you say here? Because this is obviously what Ajahn Brahm actually does. He just relaxes, and he goes into these deep states of meditation. I don't know if you have seen Ajahn Brahm sometimes meditate. It's quite amazing. When his meditation is going well, he's like this rock solid. Yeah, it's like very, very fascinating to see sometimes. Anyway, I'm not going to go too far down that track here. But and it's a very, very interesting question, because if we can crack this is like the holy grail of Buddhism. Yeah, understanding how meditation works. If you can understand what it is that Ajahn Brahm does to enable this to happen, everything in meditation happens by doing nothing, just sitting there. You have cracked it. You're in business. You're going to be enlightened too. Would you like to get enlightened? Is there anyone here who does not want to get enlightened? I would recommend the exit door if you don't want to get enlightened. Enlightenment, what is it? It's just happiness. Yeah, it is the ending of suffering in life. It is the contentment, the peace, the insight into the nature of reality. It's about wisdom. Everyone wants enlightenment or awakening. Why should one not want that? It's everything that a human being can really dream of or aspire for that is really positive and special. So this is a very interesting question. So what did I say? Well, what I said to them, I said that, well, the difference is that for Ajahn Brahm, when he sits down and he closes his eyes and he does nothing, his mind naturally inclines towards peace. Yeah, that is the nature of his mind. It naturally moves towards peace. So, right? And that is why when he sits down, it goes more and more and more and more peaceful. That's why he says, sit another hour, yeah, because if you are inclining towards peace and you sit another hour, it means you have another hour of inclining towards peace. It means that eventually you become very profound, yeah. But I said, you guys, your minds are inclining towards whatever food you want to eat. Yeah, it is inclining towards some sort of entertainment. It is inclining towards an escape through tiredness. Actually, I'm being a bit unfair, because some of the lay people get really good meditation, yeah? But those who were complaining about restlessness and tiredness, obviously they were not. So it depends why your mind is inclining. That is what makes the whole difference, yeah? If it inclines in the right way, then you become peaceful automatically. If it inclines in the wrong way, it does not. That is all. That is to this trick of meditation practice. And then they said, and then I said to them, well, actually, now you have asked me, you should ask Ajahn Brahm, yeah, because that's always interesting, because Ajahn Brahm is the kind of person who, he will always take these kind of challenges, and if I have said something, guaranteed he will say something different, right? This is the way Ajahn Brahm works, because he wants to expand on it or look at things differently. So they went to Ajahn Brahm and said, oh, this Ajahn Brahmali, we're not sure we trust him 100%. He said this, what do you say here? Yeah, this kind of a thing. And then Ajahn Brahm said, well, what I do when I meditate, I incline the mind towards renunciation, towards giving up. Yeah, and you can see how that works, because if you give things up in the world and let everything go, then of course all that remains is peace. Yeah, it's the same kind of thing. It's an inclination of the mind. Whether that inclination is towards peace or to letting go, it is a similar kind of thing that you're doing as you are guiding the mind in this way. So that is the difference. But it still leaves out the question, why is it that some person's mind inclines towards giving up? Why is it that one person's mind inclines towards peace? Yeah? How can we do this? It still leaves that question open. We haven't really answered the questions. This is what is so interesting about the Dhamma. You can really analyze it in great detail. And you will normally find very beautiful answers when you do that, when you reflect about it in the right way. And the right way means in a wise way. You see things in accordance with how the Buddha taught, if you like, and how meditation actually progresses. So what is it that underlies all of this, all this inclination of the mind? And what underlies it is one thing, and that is right view. Viewing the world in the right way, thinking about things in the right way, valuing the right things, giving preference or priority to the things that are important in life. That is what underlies everything. And now you can start perhaps to see why I was saying that there is a connection to COVID. And the reason is because COVID situation that we have now, it also has it kind of screams out for a solution. What is going on? And that solution too with COVID is right view. We need to think about the COVID situation in the right way. And when we think about the COVID situation in the right way, that is the right view. That informs you at the beginning of meditation practice and allows the meditation to work. It's fascinating, isn't it? So there is that connection there. And this is what I want to talk about now for the rest of the talk. How can we think about COVID? How can we think about these difficult things in the world in such a way that it actually helps us with the right view at the base, at the beginning of meditation, to make the whole thing kind of work out? So to get a handle on this, to get a grip on this, remember that some of the things that block meditation practice are often known as the Five Hindrances. Some of you may have heard of the Five Hindrances. I know that everyone who has kind of Buddhist background, you will have heard of the Five Hindrances. Those of you who have not a Buddhist background may not have heard it, but these are the 5 things that block meditation practice. And of these 5 hindrances, the 2 most important ones are the first 2. And the first one can be called sensory desire. It means like desire for everything within the range of the 5 senses. The second one can be called ill will, negativity of the mind. These are the 2 kind of main things that block meditation practice. So we know if right view is at the foundation of all this, seeing things in the right way, we know that there must be a connection between right view and these 2 hindrances. In other words, if we have right view, then these hindrances are going to fall away, and then meditation is going to happen. If we have wrong view, it's going to strengthen these hindrances, and then meditation is not going to happen. And I will give you an example. There's the 2 hindrances I just mentioned. One is then ill will, and the other one is then sensory desire, sometimes called sensual desire, which is not really quite right, because it's actually a very broad desire relating to everything in the sensory world. But let's start with ill will. So how is ill will overcome through right view? I just talk about this very, very briefly because it's the other one I really want to talk about. And very briefly, very simply, in Buddhism we have the idea that of non-self. That we are conditioned human beings. There's no inherent essence inside of us. What we are is a sum of all the conditioning that has happened to us in this life and maybe past lives. That is who we are. So we are these conditioned beings. Our personality is more or less set according to those conditions. It is changeable, but the parameters are set to some extent. And so this is the idea of non-self. There's no inherent essence inside of us. And what that means, when you see other people doing things that might give rise to ill will in you, remember they are a conditioned being. They are just the sum total of all the things that have worked on them in this life and the past life. When they act in a stupid way, it is not really their fault. They don't really want to be stupid, but they can't stop themselves because the conditioning is such that they have to act in a stupid way. And this is such a beautiful way of thinking about people, because what it means is that whenever you have difficulty with somebody, it is not personal. And that is such an important point, because usually the reason why we get upset by the people around us is because we take it personally. They did it against me, and I am the most important person in the universe, and they did it against me. They This is the problem. Yeah, everything gets taken personally, but it is actually never personal. It is never about you. It's never about me. It's about the internal conditions of that person coming together at such a time and then leading them on to doing what they're doing. It is about the other person. It is not about you. It's such a beautiful way of thinking, because straight away it takes away almost everything that could give rise to ill will. Instead, you have compassion for the other person. You understand that they are in the grip of a bad conditioning, that they cannot control themselves, that will lead to their own unhappiness down the road. And so you have compassion for them. You turn things around 180 degrees from focusing on yourself to focusing on the other person instead. It's such a simple teaching, but it's extraordinarily powerful. And I would really recommend you to use this in your life. If you use this consistently, it's very hard after a while to get angry with almost anyone. It's just, you can always see that actually the problem is in the other person. You can start to have compassion for them instead and understand that they are the one who have a problem. So that is how you deal with the second hindrance. But the first hindrance is in many ways more interesting and even more profound. And that is the hindrance of sensory desire. So the question is, how do we deal with this hindrance of sensory desire? And the way to do that is to think of the sensory world in the right way. To understand this world for what it actually is. That is the critical thing. And once you understand that world for what it is, you take away some of the attraction of that world. One of the fascinating things we have seen through this kind of the COVID situation we had over the last year, almost a year now or so, is how many people have been affected by that. Yeah, how many people have suffered, how many people have felt lonely and isolated. I think here in Perth we have been really well, things have gone really well compared to most of the world, but lots of suffering around the world. And really, really hard. Yeah, difficult for people to deal with this. And it is not as if COVID is even our biggest problem these days. Yeah? We have all kind of political instability around the world. You have climate change seems to be getting worse and worse all the time. It's like all of these things coming together. And it's enough to get depressed, despair or sad. But is Ajahn Brahm depressed? Not really, right? I mean, to see Ajahn Brahm depressed, you probably, that would be kind of like almost impossible to imagine. How can someone like Ajahn Brahm be depressed? It's hard to imagine that even happen. And so if he ever looks depressed, then ask him what's going on, because it would be really weird. And there is a reason why he is not depressed because of these things. I don't know if any one of you is depressed about these things, but it looks really bad. All of these things happening in the world. So how can we think about these things in such a way that actually it reduces some of the suffering that these things give us? This is one of those really critical things. And what it leads to, and this is kind of what this is about, it leads to less interest in that sensory world, because you understand it is inherently unreliable and uncertain. This is what it leads to. But the first thing which is interesting, and which I noticed when we had all these problems, especially with COVID, was how much goodness it often brought out in people. How people around the world in so many different places, it brought out compassion in them, it brought out kindness, a sense of caring for the people who are vulnerable. And you can read about this in the newspapers, but you can also see it happening right here in Perth, right here in the Buddha Society. I was listening to the Thai community over there when some of the elderly, when we couldn't come together. This was back in March when things were, a bit locked down here in Perth as well. We couldn't meet as before. And we couldn't meet in the community hall. In the community hall just across there is where many of the people with a Buddhist background, they come on the weekend to meet, to talk to the monks and chat and have a good time. They couldn't do it anymore. And so they got together and they looked after each other because they knew that people were suffering. So I could see this right here in our community, and I could see it happening around the world. And I could see it happening in the monastery. It was quite amazing at the monastery. We were just, people couldn't really come anymore and stay in the monastery. I don't know if you have been to the monastery. If you haven't been there, we get a lot of visitors every day. I don't know, maybe between 30 and 100 visitors pretty much every day. Yeah, and they come and they offer food to the monks. Yeah, and then after offering food to the monks, this is Ajahn Brahm told me this. He says it's like a miracle that they come, they offer food. After offering food to the monks, then they do the dishes. And after doing the dishes, they give a donation for the privilege. It's amazing, yeah? And but actually it's also very beautiful. It's very beautiful because it's an understanding there of the power of generosity, the power of living in the good way. And then we kind of move together. And of course, then they come up and they have a chat about Dhamma things and all of these kind of things. But at this time, because we couldn't really assemble in the hall at the monastery anymore, it meant that people couldn't come, yeah, they couldn't stay, they couldn't have a chat about the Dhamma. So what they had to do, they had to come into the monastery, yeah, and they kind of come out of the car, barely opening the door of the car, put the offerings on the table, get a quick blessing by Ajahn Brahm, and off they go again. And people would drive all the way from Perth, and they would bring more food than before because they thought, oh, the monks must be really hungry. Nobody's bringing food to them. They brought these enormous amounts. And all they got was I was driving, probably spent hours in the supermarket beforehand or cooking or whatever they did. And then they got a quick blessing and off they went. Yeah. And there was lots of people doing that, just coming out all that way and looking after the monks and doing kind of the thing that we do between the monastic sangha and the lay people in this Buddha society. It was so astonishing to see that. They didn't get to do the ordinary things, but they were actually more supportive than usual. So there's something about difficult times that brings out goodness in people. And it's kind of fascinating. Yeah, when the external problems in the world get bad, I think there's something inherent in us which says, okay, now we have to rely on internal qualities instead. The external is bad. Now we have to move towards spiritual qualities instead. We have to kind of get together and kind of deal with the external world. We understand the external world is no longer doing for us what it should do. And there's a beautiful story about this, which I read many years ago. I was still a student. This was a book that was given to me by my girlfriend at the time. Yeah, can't barely believe I had a girlfriend, but I did. It's a long time ago now. 30, 35, or I don't know, something like that. A long time ago anyway. And she gave me this book, and this book was written just after the Second World War. Yeah, and the book was something about humans and happiness and humans. Yeah, and it was largely about one of the chapters was about the paradox of happiness, how happiness sometimes arises at the strangest of times. And what this man said, and he wrote this just after the Second World War, he said that one of the strange things about the Second World War. And remember, this was a time of real hardship in large parts of Europe. Yeah, not only were there bombs and killings and fighting going on. Personally, I'm from Norway. It wasn't so bad in Norway as I was from, but in many countries it was really devastating. In Norway, it was reasonably bad, but not terribly bad. People being carted off to the gas chambers in Europe. Yeah, especially people with a Jewish background. There was bombs going on. There was a lack of food and lack of the essential things in life because the ordinary supply lines weren't working out. So it was a difficult time. But this man said, the weird thing, even though this was a very difficult time, people were generally more happy during the Second World War than they had been before, in the 1930s or whatever. And he called this the paradox of happiness. What was going on? And he said that what he thought was going on is that because the external hardship was so great, people would come together. They would care for each other. They would look after each other. There was a sense of comradeship. Yeah, there was a sense of caring because you knew the external world could no longer be relied on. You had to come together in a more spiritual way with heart qualities, with all these positive qualities. So external hardship actually made you into a more spiritual person because there was no alternative. It was the only place to turn at times like that. It's a kind of very fascinating story, yeah, and it shows us that sometimes, I love some of these Ajahn Brahm's stories, a story about good, bad, who knows, yeah. I'm sure you've probably heard the story of good, bad, who knows. We never know the outcome of things, what is really bad, what is really good for us. And again, that is what the world shows us. We don't know actually what will lead to long-term benefit or harm. Sometimes we need to go through difficult times to be able to bring out the good spiritual qualities inside of us. So is COVID bad? Well, it depends on what it brings out in us. It depends on how we deal with it. It depends on our attitude to it. Is climate change bad? It's kind of it's hard for me to say it's not bad because but again, yeah, it really depends on how we deal with it. It is not inherently bad. It's like saying, is death bad? Well, even death is not necessarily bad. It's how you deal with it actually is much more important than the fact of dying, because you're going to have to die regardless. So all of these problems in life, how we deal with it is actually much more important than the fact that these things happen. And then when we deal with it in the right way, in the spiritual way, actually something beautiful happens. And the spiritual qualities come out in people. Yeah. And then when those beautiful spiritual qualities come out in people, actually there's an inner beauty that comes instead. And that inner beauty, of course, far more important than all the external things in the world. So this is the first thing, yeah, that you kind of get out of these problems in the world. You should start to realize the external world is unreliable. We have to move into the inner qualities instead, and beautiful qualities come out of people. So this is the first point. Sometimes a lot of good things come out of difficult times. But there is an even more profound view, and that is the understanding that the external world is inherently unreliable, inherently problematic. It is always going to let us down. Yeah, people are already now talking about coming back to normal after the COVID pandemic is over. Is there such a thing as normal? I think the word normal is kind of a misguided word to use. There is no normal. Yeah, there isn't any kind of average that you come back to. It is always problematic. There's always just things changing and moving around. And then COVID ends, and then another COVID comes around the corner. And then you wait, and then you think, yay, COVID over. And then suddenly, bang, another COVID comes. Yeah? And COVID here is just a metaphor for another problem coming around the corner. Because there's always more problems coming again and again. And once you start to, and this is what we have to remember. Yeah, this is kind of the thing here, that the external world is always going to be like that. There's no aberration that we have these things. And once you get it, once it starts to gradually sink in that this is the nature of the external world, the nature of our sensory experience, what happens is that you become less interested in that entire world. Not only are you a more caring and compassionate person because you understand you have to look after people, but you also become far less interested in that world because you know it is so inherently unreliable. There's nothing to hold on to. The moment you hold on to something in that world, it gets ripped out of your hand because it is impermanent and unreliable. You cannot hold on to something which is always moving, always changing, always morphing into something else. Okay, now society is kind of heading in the right direction. Bang, it's going wrong again. And this is the nature of that world, and that is why it is so fundamentally problematic. And it is not just the large world outside, but it's also our more private world. Yeah, our world of people who are closer to us, our family members, our friends, our daily life, our job, our house, our belongings. All of these things too are unreliable. Yeah, we don't know what's going to happen around the corner. We don't know when people are going to die. We had a very prominent member of the Buddha Society here just passing away yesterday morning. Yeah, and it's kind of amazing. And things happen so fast. It's so uncertain. So that whole realm of sensuality, the whole realm of sensory things is unreliable. And the more you get that, the less interesting it is. the less kind of attached you are to that world. I look out here, I look behind, and it's a bit dark now, you can't see so much, but sometimes when you look out, it's very beautiful out there. You see the trees and you see the gardens. And sometimes I think to myself, it's impermanent. It looks beautiful now, it looks nice, but come back in 10 years, it might be a desert. Okay, maybe I'm stretching it in 10 years, but Western Australia is getting drier and drier. Who knows where these things are going to go? It might be certainly going to be changed, but what I'm seeing now is just one site which guaranteed is impermanent. This building, beautiful building, but the cracks are already showing. Are the cracks showing, Dennis? Yeah, he would know because he was part of building this building. So the cracks are already showing. It's already impermanent. Eventually, there's going to be a ruin here. And this is what happens to all things in that sensory realm. It is so unreliable, so uncertain. There was an interesting thing I read a while ago. This was one of those public intellectuals, quite a famous one. His name is, what is it again? Nicholas Taleb Nassim. I don't know if anyone of you have heard of him. And he has some interesting books about, I haven't read any of these books, of course. I always like to talk about books. I never actually read them. There was a Frenchman. He wrote a book a long time ago, How to Discuss Books Without Actually Reading Them. So you looked like you were really well read. You looked like you were the supreme, but actually never read anything apart from the title, maybe the summary of the book, and then you pretended to be really cool based on that. So I have not read this book, but one of the things that apparently he said, which was very fascinating, he said that if you're going to decide on a building, let's say an old city like London, where some of the buildings are over 1,000 years old, and you're going to decide which buildings are most likely to be here in 100 years or 200 years or 500 years. This was his thought experiment. Which building is most likely to be here? And of course you may think, it must be the new buildings, the new ones that have just been built. They are most likely to be here for a long time. Why? Because they're new, so they will last a long time. Or you might think the big buildings, because they have a lot of mass. They will last for a long time. They have a lot of steel structures, all kind of bolted together with the latest technology. They're going to last longer. He says wrong. That is the wrong way to think about the problem. If you want to understand which building is most likely to be here in 100 years' time or 500 years' time, and this is why he is called a public intellectual, because he thinks different from everyone else. He says, no, the way to find out is to look at which building has actually been here the longest. That is how you can extrapolate which building is most likely to be here in the future. Why? Because they have proven over time that they have that resistance, ability to withstand all the problems in the world and then carry on into the future. Sometimes it's so hard to know. The building might be new, but maybe it has certain weaknesses. Maybe, the enemy will come and blow it up or whatever, because it's kind of a nice symbol to blow up a big building like the World Trade Center, something like that. And it's a fascinating insight. And this same insight we can use in Buddhist teachings. What is the world going to be like in the future? The same kind of idea. And the way to understand the future is not to fantasize about it, is not to dream about it. The Buddha has this beautiful simile of the dream. He says that the sensory world is like a dream. We think about it. We have this idea of where we're going to go. We have this idea that in the future I will be such and such. I will be a big CEO of a company. I will be really successful. I'll have this wonderful husband or this marvelous wife. And everything will be just nice. You know what dreams are like? Dreams are really unrealistic. You know what I was dreaming of when I was young? It was not being a monk. I never dreamt of being a monk. I had kind of crazy dreams myself, and of course I ended up like this. So you can see how unrealistic it is. And so the Buddha says it's like a dream. And then one day you wake up from the dream and it's all gone. You realize the dream was unrealistic. So to avoid dreaming about the future, we look to the past. We look to human history. What was the past like? And if we look to the past, what do we see in human history? We see wars. We see famines. We see pandemics. We see heartache. You see people getting killed. You see violence in the families. You see all of these kind of things happening, yeah? And there's so much of it. And it's happened throughout history. Is our future going to be any different? Don't dream about the future. Be realistic about it. Look to the past. Then extrapolate. Then you have a much better idea of what the future is going to be like. You're going to be more realistic. And if you want to be happy, number one priority, you have to be realistic about what things are like. If you're not realistic, there's no way you're going to be able to make the right decisions. Good decisions rely on realism. So this is how we see the future. And I have applied that sometimes in my own life. Sometimes I think, yeah, these monastic robes, they're really kind of awkward, a bit too hot. I wish I could wear a t-shirt like some of you, yeah, a bit more cool in here. I'm Norwegian by birth, I'm used to snow and ice, I'm not used to this kind of 35 degrees, kind of crazy Australian. Actually, I'm getting more and more used to this. I probably can't go back to Norway anymore now, it's just too late. And anyway, I got my Aussie passport, so I guess I'm half Aussie now, so what can you do? So things change. But sometimes you think, well, what if I were to, maybe I should get rid of this, I can grow my hair a bit longer, and I can kind of do other things instead. Maybe have a relationship, who knows? But then I kind of use this idea about relationships in the past. I look at, and the people I find the most interesting to look at is my own family. I hope they're not listening. And I look at my own family. My family, very good people. Yeah, they're really, really nice people in so many ways. But then I look at their relationships. And my parents were married their whole life until my father died, which is quite a feat these days to be married your entire life. And my brother has a wife, and my sister also passed away, but she was married. So they all had quite reasonably good relationships. But was it the kind of relationship that I wanted to have when I looked at it? It wasn't quite right. Yeah, it's not really as good as I thought a relationship should be. And of course, the conceit comes in. I can do better. Yeah, I can probably have a good relationship, but actually, you can't. You're going to make exactly the same mistakes as other people are. I'm going to make the same mistakes as my family members because they're a bit like me. Go to history. Go to the past. Look at other people around you. Yeah, look at people's relationship in general. How great are they? How wonderful are they? And in this way, you can step back a little bit. You can be more realistic about these things. It's a pretty dark talk, isn't it? Maybe. So the idea here is not to get everyone depressed and to go back. Please don't commit suicide tonight, because of what I've said, because I'll get into really bad books of the Buddhist society. The idea is just to help you to think about the world in a slightly different way, to understand things in a different way, to look at things from a new perspective. Nothing has gone wrong in the world when we have COVID. Nothing has gone wrong in the world when someone dies young. Nothing has gone wrong in the world when there's a divorce. Nothing has gone wrong in the world when there's climate change. All of these things are actually to be expected. They are part and parcel of what this existence is. And as you look at it like that, you start to withdraw your interest in that world. You start to get right view. This is what the Buddha calls right view. This is an aspect of right view, and it's a more practical aspect than what we normally hear about, like karma and rebirth. Karma and rebirth, very important, but this is even more practical, more down to earth, something you can apply straight away. This is the way the Buddha says we should think about the world. And we can take it even further. This is just remembering the impermanence of all things. There's nothing to hold on to there. Why should we value all of these things that you cannot hold on to? There's no point in valuing those things. And as we give up the external world, we move inwards instead. And we find the refuge. We find the freedom from that external affliction inside. And that is a very large part of what the Buddhist path is about. Because inside, that is your own world. That is where you have a say. We can decide how we want to think. We can decide how we want to intend in the world, how we want to treat ourselves and other people. We have that power, each one of us. So our inner world, we have far more say over than we have over external things. Basically, we have almost no say at all. We are 1 out of 7.5 billion people. How much say do we have? Zip, basically. But our inner world, that is our world to deal with. And so you start to turn in a different direction. And the more you turn in that direction, the more you have that right view, which enables someone like Ajahn Brahm to then just sit down, let go. He knows the external world is utterly uninteresting, so he lets go. And because of that, he's able to experience the highest bliss that is accessible to human beings. It is not found outside, it is found within, in meditation practice on the spiritual path. That is what he does. But there's even more, yeah. I have a few minutes left. There's even more that can be said about this external world. One thing is the fact that it is inherently unreliable and impermanent and always changing. But another thing you can say about it is that it is also not all that satisfactory. Yeah, we're always kind of chasing after things. We're always running after things in that external world, running around and never really getting to a point where we have it. Yeah, okay, now I've got it. I don't need to chase anymore. No, there's always more chasing. There's always more running after things. Craving, desire is always there. In your dreams, in your fantasies, it's like, okay, when I get that, then I'll be really happy and content. But if you do get it, which you often don't, yeah, if you don't get it, it's even worse, but if you do get it, you realize actually it doesn't lead to that satisfaction you thought anyway, and then you carry on. Yeah, and it goes on and on and on. It's not really satisfying. It doesn't really lead to anything where you feel fulfilled. Fulfillment happens somewhere else. Fulfillment happens on the spiritual path. And the Buddha uses this beautiful simile to explain how this works. There's so many beautiful similes in that. The simile of the dream I just mentioned now, this is the simile of the hungry dog. Yeah, simile of the hungry dog is this hungry dog goes to a butcher's shop. Yeah, and the hungry dog stands out the butcher shop trying to look cute. I don't think I can do a cute dog, but you know, looking up with big eyes, trying to kind of, I don't know if dogs smile or what they do, but they're trying to look super cute. So the butcher will chuck him some meat, yeah, and the dog gets some meat. If the dog gets meat, it's very, very happy. So the hungry dog comes to the butcher shop, waiting outside, hoping desperately that the butcher will throw it some meat. Do butchers throw valuable meat to dogs? You can guess. Well, in this simile anyway, they don't. And maybe there are some really kind butchers in the world, but in this simile, the butchers are really stingy. No way you're going to give any meat to that dog. So the butcher is in the shop, he kind of scrapes off all the nice meat, and when there's only the bone left, a bit of blood on the bone, okay, I'll give the bone to the dog. Yeah, so chucks out the bone, and the dog, so happy, yeah, gets hold of the bone. But there's nothing on that bone apart from blood. So is there any sustenance? There's no sustenance. It doesn't really stop the hunger. It doesn't stop the craving or desire of that dog. In fact, it leads to more desire because you get the taste of the blood. Yeah, and it licks it off. And then, after having licked off the blood, it runs off and goes off to the next butcher shop because he realized, well, this butcher, he's stingy. Let me go to the next one and try the next one. You go to the next one, try to look cute again. Yeah, same thing as before. Another bone smeared with blood, yeah? Runs off to the next one. Another bone smeared with blood. And so on and on and on. Until one day it dies of old age. And it dies of old age. It still wants to get those blooming bones. It still wants to get that meat, yeah? It dies with craving fully intact. It gets reborn. And when it gets reborn as a little puppy, its mum takes it, guess where? To the butcher shop. Yeah. And it's kind of, it's bleak, yeah? I told you tonight it's going to be really bleak. It's a really bleak talk. And so it goes to the butcher shop again. And it goes on and on like this. And the Buddha says, this is like the sensory realm. This is what we are all doing. Yeah, it is not perhaps quite as bleak as the dog, but it's a similar kind of thing where you keep on doing the same thing again and again, looking for the impossible. It cannot actually happen. That sensory world is never going to give you that satisfaction. It is always going to be something lacking. You're always going to be left with craving and desire afterwards. So now I'm really kind of piling it on here with the negative things of the sensory world. It's always impermanent. It's always unreliable. That's one thing. And even if it wasn't even if that wasn't enough, it also is not very satisfactory either. Even when you get it, bad news. Yeah, that's what the Buddha said. So you may not even get this fully. It's actually quite hard to understand this fully, but you may get a little bit of feeling for that there's some truth to this. And if you get a little bit of feeling that there is some truth to this, that is a little bit of right view. So allow that to kind of percolate inside of you. You don't have to jump onto these things and say, Amen, this is the absolute truth. That's not how we do things in Buddhism. But instead, just reflect on it. And if you reject it, that's fine. But if you think there's some truth to it, allow it gradually to develop. See where you go. Don't force yourself to think about it in a way that leads to despair. And then what happens as you do that? You start to look for happiness somewhere else. You start to look for happiness within, in the spiritual realm, and you start to look for happiness in compassion, kindness, caring for others, caring for yourself. And as you do that, something amazing happens. You're building up an inner happiness, an inner well-being, an inner contentment that is impervious to external phenomena. Yeah, not entirely impervious. You will still be affected by external things, but far, far less. You're building up and resilience. Yeah, resilience is one of these kind of words people are throwing around these days. This is how you build up that resilience. Because you have inner qualities that are strong and powerful, an inner degree of happiness and liberation and freedom that no one can take from you. And because of that, you have independence from the world around you. And as you build up these things inside, build up all of these beautiful qualities, as you sit down and meditate because you have a right view, you are less interested in the external world. It means that you are more able to meditate. You're more able to stay with the breath. Yeah, you don't really fantasize about that world anymore because that world is less interesting to you. Just like Ajahn Brahm does. And because you do that, and because you pull back from that world, suddenly the mind automatically inclines towards meditation, automatically inclines to giving up those things that are not interesting, inclines towards peace instead. And that is then how you then enjoy that inner tranquility, and you find all of these beautiful things inside, the peace, the tranquility, the bliss, all of these things that are available in meditation. And what is so strange when this happens, what is so weird about this, is that all of the things that you have been looking for all along, and what is it? What are the things that we're looking for? Well, we're looking for some sense of satisfaction, some sense of contentment in our life, some sense of fulfillment, yeah? Ultimately, that is what it is about. You can call it happiness if you like, or you can call it giving up of suffering and problems. You find that right there within, through your meditation practice. And there comes a day when your meditation is so profound that you give up all desires for everything in the world, and you feel 100% content, and you realize you have found the very thing that you have been looking for all along. Absolute contentment, the final kind of happiness, the giving up of all the things in the world. Yeah, and right there, no more driving force, no more desire to go anywhere. And that means if you have no desire to go anywhere, then by definition you have discovered the meaning of life itself. It is found within, through the path of meditation. That is how you get there. This is the purpose of all of this. This is how Ajahn Brahm is able to do the meditation in this way. Or anyone who is skilled, whether you are a layperson or a monastic, who has practiced these things in the right way. That is where it leads. That is why right view is so important to support the meditation practice. So, I hope I haven't scared you completely. Always. I hope you have got something out of this, and anyway, I just wanted to say these things because sometimes we may despair when times are difficult, but actually there is so much upside, to difficulties, and if we use the upside, if we use things in the right way, actually, good, bad, who knows? In the long run, it may be very powerful, very useful, and it may actually lead to something very, very beautiful at the end of the day, far more beautiful than you ever dreamed was possible. Okay, thank you very much. So, okay, so are there any questions? Thank you. Are there any questions from the hall before I go to external ones? Yes, there's one over here. Could we have a microphone over here, please? Oh, okay, you have to come up here. Okay.
Thank you for tonight. Always the meditation is so beautiful. The talk was a bit scary. What about the concept of gratitude? Does the Buddha talk about that to be grateful in the moment? And also with meditation, when I started, it was hopeless, but I never gave up. And now I have exquisite meditation, beautiful jhanas. And I'm not a monk or a nun. Thank you.
Great. No, that's marvelous. So that is, one of the things that you learn through meditation is that you learn how to kind of guide your mind in the right way. Yeah, initially you don't really understand that, but you learn how to guide. This is why I say to people always afterwards to reflect for a few moments how meditation worked, why it didn't work, so you get an idea of what actually gives rise to good meditation. This is what you have learned, yeah, by just by doing it. You may not even be aware that that's what you did, but that's what you did. So that's how the meditation came about. That's how it happened. And what was the first part? Can you just quick? What was the first part of your question? Gratitude, right, exactly, gratitude. Yeah, the Buddha does talk about gratitude as well in the suttas, and I think it is something very powerful, yeah, and it's something very, very useful, something you can actually use in your meditation, especially when you start out, and you can count your blessings, count the good things in your life, and have a sense of gratitude for all the positive things that happened in your life. Have a sense of gratitude for the Buddhist society being here, having a sense of gratitude for this beautiful space. You can come together. Yeah, it's not a given at all that this place should even exist. And there are so many things to be grateful for, and we tend to take things too much for granted. And the more gratitude we have is a very powerful part, can be used very, very powerfully in meditation practice. So absolutely. The Buddha said actually that this is one of the rare qualities in the world, the quality of gratitude. And it says it's only really superior people who have a sense of gratitude. Yeah, it's quite rare. So if anyone who has gratitude, well done. It means that you are doing something right and you're kind of on the spiritual path there. Yeah. Anyone else want to say anything? Yeah. Eddie? Yeah, okay. Yeah. Please, Eddie. You're dressed to kill tonight, aren't you? Yeah.
Before I came, I thought, I'm not going to ask questions, you see. Yeah. But this on COVID, I thought, I want to ask, okay? Yeah. The question is regarding COVID and immunity,
COVID and immunity, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Am I the right person? Okay, yeah.
Quite some time ago, there was this chief Buddhist high priest, he was telling us, okay, when there was some virus going on, he says if our system is, energy around us is, in us is good and around us is good, these viruses have got no chance to enter us, Okay, yeah. So when I went back, I was just pondering, maybe, it's our, when we're happy, when our energy is good, maybe the immune system is, I think it's high, it's called it good, isn't it? Yeah. So that sort of deters, And then also when I see all this, that's my own thing, when I see all these countries having all this, like COVID, I was, there's so internal disharmony, The people might not be happy, And then the immune system is low, and then these things come.
Yeah. Yes,
is there any correlation, you think?
I think there's probably a little bit to that. Yeah, a little bit. I think there are some examples even of the immune system being stronger for people who have a positive attitude and are happy. I think there's some truth to that. But I don't think it means that you can just forget about COVID and pretend it doesn't. You still get ill. You might get a little bit less ill. You might be a little bit less susceptible. But it's not as if you can just you can avoid COVID that way. Look at some of the greatest, like Ajahn Chah, he was one of the greatest monks in maybe the 20th century, Ajahn Brahm's teacher, and he got really, really sick for a long time and suffered enormously through that illness in the last part of his life. So just because you are spiritually very developed and you have a very pure mind doesn't mean that you are beyond illness, because in the end it's a physical body, and if you still have a physical body, you've got to be careful. So I think that is a little bit dangerous to say that forget about all the protection because I got so much metta and the virus doesn't want to come to me. Yeah.
I mean, maybe have a shorter version. You know, I mean, instead of having a long term, like a long time COVID, maybe you recover quicker.
Maybe,
you know, all this.
Maybe, yeah.
That's
maybe.
just my thought, you know. Now.
Yeah. It can never hurt to have metta. Yeah, so to be kind and have metta, because it can never hurt. So yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Anyone else? Everyone happy? Okay, so let's have a look at the questions from outside. And first one is, how may I better maintain right speech with my parents instead of just avoiding them? The habit patterns of harsh speech are very strong. I find myself keeping my precepts well with others. Yes? So, true, yeah, it is difficult with parents, and I can understand that, because the habits, as you say, are very strong. So you have to, first of all, as you say, it's probably good not to, spend too much time, especially when you feel that your mind is in the wrong place, then kind of withdraw a little bit. There's no point in kind of hanging around if you're just going to say bad things or harsh things. So pull back a little bit. But it's important to use the kind of reflection I talked about early on in the talk, that your parents, they are also the way they are. They have to be the way they are. They cannot really be any different. And once you accept them, once you accept them fully for who they are, you won't get upset anymore. You won't have harsh speech anymore. Why? Because accepting your parents is a bit like accepting the wind in the trees. When you hear the wind outside, do you get angry with the wind because the wind is too loud? You might close the window, you might do something, but you're not going to get angry with the wind. Why? Because you know it's silly to get angry with the wind. Your parents are just like the wind outside. They are conditioned phenomena. Your parents are conditioned phenomena. Because they are conditioned phenomena, because their personalities are pretty much set from the past, they cannot really be any different. And when you understand they can't be any different, well, then you can start to have compassion for them. You can start to be kind for them. But you don't. You stop expecting the impossible. One of the reasons you have harsh speech is because you are expecting them to be different from what they are. And this is kind of strange. We're always like that. We're trying to change other people, expecting people to be different from what they are. But they probably can't be any different. So acceptance is the only possibility. That is another kind of bit of a downer, isn't it? You can't change people. Again, that sort of seeing reality like that also makes kind of human relationships sometimes also kind of less interesting as well. Anyway, so try that and see what happens. Question from Lithuania. When living with someone of bad conduct in body and speech, what would be a good way to help them? A good way to help them is to help yourself. Don't try to help others too much, because trying to help others too much usually leads to frustration. People are very rarely too keen on being helped. I'm going to help you. I don't want to be helped. Stay away. But I'm coming from a good place. I'm going to help you. No, I don't want to be helped. Okay, you can't help people sometimes, People have to want to be helped first of all. So first of all, you have to find out, does this person really want to be helped? And then you have to ask yourself, where are you coming from? Why do you want to help them? Is it because of some attachment, perhaps? Usually it's because of attachment you want to help others. Or do you want to help any stranger on the street who has bad conduct? Well, if you want to help every stranger on the street who has bad conduct, then you know it's not attachment. But if it isn't like that, very likely there is some attachment there, and you want to change them for that. If you want to change them, they will probably feel that. Because they feel that, they will resist it. That's usually how it goes. So to be able to change others, first of all, you have to really do it for their sake and not for your own sake. Secondly, you have to recognize that even then, a lot of people are not really interested in changing. Thirdly, it is very hard to change. And we know that from ourselves. I have tried in my life to change, and some things I haven't been able to change. Okay, so I shrug my shoulders. Okay, this is the way it is, so I'm just going to accept that. Do not try to go beyond it. And so, it's difficult enough to change ourselves. So how can we expect other people to change if we cannot even change ourselves sometimes? So instead of doing that, I think far better is to just accept them for who they are. Work on yourself, work on your own acceptance, and then you become a much better person. And when you become a better person, then it is more likely that they will want to change, because they will see something is happening to you. They will want to know what's going on. This is what happens in many ways with me. When I started out as a Buddhist monk, my parents were not impressed at all. They thought, what's going on? He's been kind of sucked into this evil sect, cult, and he's going to be gobbled up and brainwashed. We'll never see him again. And so I decided I couldn't really kind of convert them by telling them the truth. Okay, listen, okay, I'm telling you the truth, you just listen and be converted. It doesn't work like that with your parents especially. So I realized actually I had to be more gentle with them. So I started to just be a good son, be kind, do the right thing, say the right thing.
SLT Mobitel home broadband online learning are working data Dhamma. SLT Mobitel.
Here. And gradually, and they came to Perth a few times, all the way from Norway, and they kind of they got here to the heat, and they almost died in the heat, I think, in Perth. And but gradually, they came around. But it wasn't from me pushing, because I realized pushing is crazy, until one day they started to ask me, oh, please, tell us about Buddhism. Let's do some meditation together. Give us a talk. And one day my father said to me, well, now I used to be your teacher, now you're my teacher. And when that happens, you know that you have succeeded somehow with getting the message across. You never tried, and that was a critical thing that actually made it go across. So be very careful if you try to help others, because very often it tends to backfire. Hello, BSWA. So my name is not BSWA, but anyway, it's close enough. My question is, if you are a Buddhist this birth, how do you know for sure that you will be a Buddhist next birth? Thank you. Yes, how do you know that maybe when you wake up in your next life, bang, you are a Christian. Is that what you think? Or maybe you are a Muslim or something? Remember, the point of the Dhamma, one of the things about rebirth, is that our personal characteristics, our character, tends to be carried on from one life to the next one. So you bring with you your character traits usually from one life to the next one. So if you are a very staunch Buddhist in this life, if you have a very good understanding of the suttas, if you have practiced a lot, so you have a lot of kindness and these kind of things, these are the qualities you will bring with you. So it is very likely that when you hear the Dhamma in your next life, you come to the Buddhist society, one day someone says, oh yeah, let's go to the Buddhist society. No, forget about the Buddhist side. No, just come in. And you come and think, wow, something familiar about this place. I feel good here. Why? Because you felt good here in the past. That's how it tends to work. So there's something familiar with these texts, these teachings, with everything. So it is very likely you will be a Buddhist in a future life, simply because our habits tend to carry on. But there is no guarantee. You don't know. Maybe there's no Buddhism around. Maybe you will gradually lose Buddhism. But the best thing you can do to ensure you're a Buddhist, practice as much as you can in this life, understand the teachings as well as you possibly can. With those two things together, you will then be ready, most likely to be a Buddhist in the future. Question from Germany. Hello, Germany. How do mind and feelings relate to each other, and how can I separate them? Am I not both? Mind and feeling don't both influence each other. What is the difference? Yes, they are the same in a certain way. They are the same in the sense that you can never separate out mind and feelings completely. If there is mind, there will also be feelings. And you cannot have feelings without mind. If you have to be aware to be able to know that there's feelings there. And whenever you are aware, there's always a certain kind of feeling. Even just neutral feeling is considered a kind of feeling. So the two go together, but they're also different in the sense that even though the mind is, in a sense, is there, the feelings are also fluctuating all the time. The feelings are always changing. So we can develop these things. We can change the feelings. We can change our mind through development on the spiritual path. And this is what we do. So do they influence each other? Of course they influence each other. If you feel bad, you are more likely to say bad things. You get in a bad mood. If you feel too terrible, sometimes you do anyway, unless you have enough distance to your feelings. So absolutely they influence each other. And this is one of the kind of critical things on the Buddhist path, is a thing we call the sense restraint, is when we learn how to deal with feelings and we don't attach too much to them, so we crave for them or we get upset when we have bad feelings, so that our mind is more even. Yeah, this is one of the critical things on the Buddhist path, this idea of sense restraint, and some of the things I talked about tonight. Another question from Germany. When I started meditating, my mind was curious and motivated to stay still. But as more time have passed, as more I feel sleepy and cloudy during meditation. What should I do? So you have to maybe get some meditation, some nice guided meditation for a while. That kind of puts you in the right mind space. Yeah, that kind of puts you in the right place. Maybe remember the cloudiness of the mind and the sleepiness of mind comes usually because you're not all that interested in the meditation. So bring up some topics that give rise to more happiness and clarity. Somebody suggested gratitude here today, which is a beautiful way of giving sense to a bright mind. You feel grateful for your place in the world, for all the things that you have. Yeah, I mean, a lot of us we're living in a world, in the first world, we're living in a world of abundance. We have a lot. Not everybody, but a lot of people do. And so rejoice in that. You have so many good things happening to you. You have the Dhamma there, the teachings of the Buddha. Wow, it's pretty amazing what we have in this world. So bring these things up. Whatever it is, bring something which gives inspiration to the mind, that gives interest in it. This is one of the critical things in Buddhist meditation that the Buddha talks about again and again and again. How to give rise to the pamudja and the piti. These are the gladness and the beauty in the mind. And that comes from reflecting in the right way. Reflecting on your past kindness. Reflecting on the marvel of having the Buddha and the Dhamma as your teacher. Reflecting on gratitude, all of these kind of things. And as you do that, you feel inspired. Read something which inspires you. Listen to a Dhamma talk that inspires you. Something that picks you up, and then you are in business. Maybe. Hopefully. Good luck. Question from Rosalinda in Latvia. Hello, Rosalinda. What is the best way or approach to start off mindfulness? So mindfulness, probably you mean mindfulness meditation, the idea of practicing meditation. And the best way to do it is just to get some good instructions from somewhere, like the kind of instructions that you might get here, wherever it is. And as you get those good instructions, you have some foundation to get you started. And you sit down and then you just you follow the instructions and you see how it takes you. So this is usually the best way to start. You can basically follow the kind of instructions you get here, because here the idea is precisely to bring up mindfulness. One of the things to remember about mindfulness is that it comes usually with many other factors. And this is why we talk about the Noble Eightfold Path in Buddhism. And all of these other factors also have to be practiced. So make sure that you bring in morality and ethics and kindness in your life. And as you bring these things in your life, that will all support the mindfulness. If you want to do meditation regularly, it can be good to set aside a few minutes every day. Sometimes a good time can be in the morning, for example, when you are fresh, not straight away when you wake up, but maybe after having been up for half an hour or something. Have a nice spot you can sit down, where you sit down regularly and do a regular meditation. Have a bit of support by maybe listening to some guided meditation, or do it on your own if you prefer that after a while, whatever it is that you need for support in the meditation. And as you do that, you use this in a good way. The best way to use mindfulness is as a support for living a better life. It may not get very deep in meditation on a daily basis. It's quite hard to go deep in a daily basis, but it's enough to feel better, to feel more relaxed. One of the critical things is to enjoy what you're doing. If you enjoy the meditation, it will guarantee that you have a friend for a very, very long time that you can take with you into the future and get enormous benefit out of. So really important to enjoy it. Don't force it. Don't punish the body. Don't sit in one posture for so long when you have lots of pain. Yeah? Enjoy what you're doing. Then it becomes something very useful. Okay, good luck and see what happens. Okay, that's it for tonight, everyone. So let's pay respect to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Svakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami